Tony Williams, a drummer perspective. Meeting Tony Williams. The first time I was aware of Tony Williams, my drum teacher John Wadham back home in Ireland had me listen to him play with Miles Davis. I want you to listen to this drummer and then tell me what you hear. After what seemed a long while, the hiss from the record turning under the needle was silenced by a furious trumpet, followed promptly by drums and upright bass. It sounded so raw, not like I was there, but more like the musicians were here. I was instantly captivated by the music, notes, and energy. My brain went into overload to try and even contemplate what was occurring. "That's Tony Williams on drums," John said. I was only a boy, so never heard the name before. I knew of Buddy Rich, Louis Bellson, and Gene Krupa. Buddy I had seen on TV, and John was obsessed with him, and he introduced me to the playing of Krupa and Bellson. They are all incredible. What I was hearing now with Tony Williams was also great, but had a different flair. The intent to me was coming from a different place. I still think this today. The fury of the trumpet was like nothing I had heard before. From time to time my dad had brass in his band, mostly sax, but this golden plumbing was so very different to anything I'd ever witnessed. Almost like a guitar, and most certainly like a voice, singing. To me, Mr. Williams, which was how I would address the drummers we would discuss in lessons, Mr. Rich, etc., was following right behind the trumpet as opposed to playing in the song. As a young guy, my focus was to be in the song. As I listened, it was as though the drummer was taking the path the trumpet player was leaving behind. I had no idea that Miles Davis was the leader and these were his compositions. The tune seemed to grab the listener and shake them with some sort of truth. I'd not established the truth concept until much later in my music career. The grab bit I got instantly. I had imaginary sweat thinking to play such patterns by Mr. Williams. Secretly, while I was excited for John to stop the record at any moment and show me a section and a drum pattern, I was also nervous. Just as I'd finished that thought, the epic trumpet stopped. I guessed it was the end of the tune. I was wrong. Mr. Williams began to solo. This was the defining moment I like to call meeting Mr. Williams. The solo opened with the snare conversation. I recall thinking how real the snare sounded, meaning unprocessed or boxy like many records I had heard recently, which of course was the sound of the 80s era. I liked it in the right music, such as pop and rock, but not jazz. I've been listening to a lot of big band music at home and with John during lessons. The snare was honest and again felt like it was in the room. As the rest of the kit was explored by Tony Williams, I was getting more acquainted with him. It was a solo, but it was like he was introducing himself first and then as a drummer. Often solos were taken by players to be introduced by the leader to the audience. On this occasion, I got a sense of personality. From a young age, I've always been curious about the person beyond their gift. From all many interests, I've always taken this approach. From race car drivers, actors, martial artists, scientists, poets, and more. I want to know the man or woman behind the talent. I found that when you discover how they got to where they are, why, and what inspired them, you uncover a treasure chest of invaluable lessons. From editorials and footage, I came to understand the immense talent and passion Tony Williams had. He was incredibly open, while also being very intentional. Mr. Williams in this solo was saying, "My name is Tony Williams, drumming and music is my life." John sits opposite me, glancing sometimes to see my reaction. He always had the volume up considerably so you could feel it. So conversation would never happen until a record was fully done. As Tony concluded his solo and the band joined him again, John made his nod to me across the drum room, and when the record finished, he nodded again downwards with a respect for what we both just heard. He waited for my comment, which was, I hope one day I can play that well so that people know it's me. John simply replied, practice. He always gave utmost respect to the great jazz drummers and insisted students be aware of all of them and their work. After that day, I made it my mission to purchase a record with Tony Williams on it. The following Saturday, I took a bus ride to Dublin, an hour and a half journey on the bus, and went to my favourite record store. The guy knew me there and pointed me to the jazz section. It was significantly smaller than the rest of the genres. The store was busy at that time, and I was the only one browsing through the jazz records. They were stacked alphabetically. I couldn't remember the name of the artist, but I remembered Davis. Under the letter D, I found several Miles Davis LPs. I looked on the back to find one with Tony Williams mentioned as the drummer. The one they had was Miles Smiles. Sticker price was £20. I left home with £30. Bus ticket was £8 return, so leaving me with little cash for lunch before my journey home. With Miles Smiles in hand, I make my way to the counter, excited for the prospect of hearing Tony Williams back home. I hand the sealed record to the dude who runs the store. This came in last week. I don't think it's ever been played. He places it in the bag that simply had a record symbol on it. So that's 20. Hesitating, I ask, would you take 15? Wide-eyed in surprise, he replied, but I just told you, it's basically new. I'd never asked for discount before. I told him my lunch story. Go on then, he said. I hand him the 15, thank him and make my way to Burger King for a meal deal. I made many trips to Dublin from my home in Wicklow to purchase music. Many times it was to buy new drumsticks or music. I would suffer with chewed sticks for weeks in order to add to my music collection. I sit eating my meal while reading the notes on the back of the record. I won't open it until I get home. The notes read like a review about Miles and the record. I was intrigued. I read it several times on my way home. Buying vinyl was always a great experience. You felt like you were connected to music. At least I did. I was excited to hear Tony Williams and learn patterns in jazz drumming. Night had fallen by the time I got home. It was winter, and I think it was 7 p.m. Too late to play drums in my development. I went straight to my drum room, which my dad had built for me. It was a brick building at the end of our garden. I loved it. It was my space to practice and to play records. Listened to it 3 times before I learned to place the needle at Footprints. This was the tune that spoke to me. The right cymbal pattern was so clear and present. Soon I had identified the pulse. Tony would change it in terms of time and texture. I would play along with it in my mind, but would lose place. It was then I realised, truly, I must listen. Like, really listen. Why would I try to play something I had not yet learned fully? I guess I was just enthused. Placing the needle on the first groove of Orbits fills my drum room. Miles is in top gear, Tony Williams following suit. Sometime a few days later, I connect headphones to my hi-fi and listen carefully to the detail. Detail, another word I associate with Tony Williams. I can hear the wood of his sticks contacting the rim. It's immediate. Popular music of the late 80s was reserving the cross stick for ballads. I was understanding a much broader use. It was like the chatter in a coffee shop midday. When he introduces the toms and then the snare briefly to bring the tune to a close, I recall putting my head back in a didn't expect that motion. Tony Williams appears to channel and control energy to evoke emotion and tension, something I continue to work on myself. By the time I hear Dolores, I have a better Polaroid of Tony Williams. In my mind, I had taken the picture in John's drum room and had been developing it in my memory until I finally had him on record for myself. To repeatedly listen and process his thinking and playing. I could see him fully for the drummer he was. No doubt, he is very present during the music, but also respectful of the song form, while also being superbly expressive in his solos. I am Tony Williams. being vocalised each time. I bought as much Miles Davis and Tony Williams as I could over the years, records and video. While I never met Mr. Williams, it is with great pleasure that I can be with him now anytime I want, and every moment is a lesson in drumming, musicality and spirit.